Hello and welcome everybody to this year's the Gruyter webinar from our DGBA team to the topic the importance of digital archives in 2020. Who would have thought that we meet here under that circumstances in such a crazy year that developed how no one from us thought, and I also think no one from you thought, but I'm really happy that you all made your way into our webinar here. I see it's about 60 or now 63 attendees. We still have our hotline running, so all of you had the luck to have no technical problems, but if there's someone of you who has no sound or anything, you can still call the hotline we mailed you, and we hope that you all had a comfortable experience then. Let me start with some technical and content advices. Your audio and video will be turned off during the presentations, so don't worry, no one will see you having your coffee or even your beer. You can just lay back and enjoy the webinar. Another important thing is the webinar will be recorded, so you won't have to make notes or anything. We will send the presentation around, and a recording of the webinar will be sent around a bit later as well. So don't worry, you can just, as I said, enjoy the webinar. And another important thing is, if you have a question during the webinar, please use the Q&A box. It's Frage und Antwort if you have the German Zoom version and the mentioned Q&A box in the English version. This is just at the bottom of your Zoom interface, and we will collect the questions there and try to answer as much questions as possible. We don't know how much questions you will post, so if there's too many questions, we will try maybe to collect these questions that we can have a bit of a summit or anything. And if there are questions we didn't answer, just feel free to contact us. There's my email address, florian.hofbauer@gruyter.com. We will show it again after the webinar, and I will post it into the chat as well. So you will have all possibilities to contact us, and we hope that we will answer all of your questions. And then I have another additionally info for our speakers. I already told them, but yes, again, all our Teams and Outlook are closed, so no background noises will disturb us. Let me first introduce our speakers. I think the first one I'd like to welcome is Iuliu Kiritescu. It's our guest today. We are really happy to have him on board. Hi, Iuliu. He's the product manager of our partner Datagroup International. That's the developer that is digitizing our books. You see them behind of us. I'm right now in the archive in our historical library of the Gruyter. And we're really happy to have Iuliu on board today. He will have a talk with us later, and we will go into some technical details. And yeah, he will tell about his happy and maybe challenging moments in the more than 3 years we are working together now. Another one I'd like to introduce to you is Saskia Wenzel. She's the senior manager of our DGBA team, and is handling the publisher partnerships with the university libraries we are working together with. Hello, if there's any partner from us in the webinar right now. And Saskia will tell us a bit about the history of our project. Another member of our team, my team, is Danielo Methke. Hi, Danielo. He's the business process manager of the Gruyter and is a bit of our technical guy inside the team. And he will open a bit his cave of technical informations and workflows he developed during the the 3 years of DGBA right now. And yeah, last but not least, I'm Florian Hofbauer. I'm the librarian in our team. My title is almost as long as Danielo's one. It's Back Office Associate Partners and Archives. And yes, as I said, I'm dealing with the back office, with the library, with the real archive. And yeah, I'm going to start the webinar by explaining our claim a bit, the bird's eye view. What are we dealing with? Why are we talking about digital archives? Why are we thinking that digital archives have become even more important in 2020? Then we will talk about the project, as I said, the beginning, the idea behind, some actual facts, the status quo, and of course some numbers that you can get an imagination where we are, what we had to handle with. And the last part will be together with our partner Iuliu Kiritescu from Datagroup, and yeah, we will tell some technical details about the implementation, as well as some findings, some curious titles out of our digitization history, and of course some production insight directly from Datagroup, directly from our partner. And at the end, we will have a discussion together with all members, and of course together with Mr. Kiritescu. And I hope that discussion, as I mentioned, will answer all of your questions. And yeah, we hope that we'll have a productive hour. I spoke enough about the webinar, about the introduction. Now we're going to start. What are digital archives? What are we handling with in 2020? And of course, what is cultural memory? So we have a cultural memory of 270 years at our publishing house. We have these old books. We had these books already printed, but yeah, there are much older things, I guess. There are, for example, folk songs that are living for 10,000s of years, that are really, really old songs. And yeah, I think the invention of a folk song didn't wrote him down. It's just that this culture has been staying alive during the years, during natural changes, during every changes. The people were singing these folk songs. And so from a generation to a generation, this cultural memory has been surviving. And now we're at the point that, as I said, we are able to handle these informations much more professional. But digital archives are still necessary because they're still hiding away, I prove you. And yeah, my first claim I have to you is that I was researching on the topic, and I found an essay from a German guy. It's not even that actual. It's out of a scientific paper from 1986. It's called Cognitive Science, and it's from a German guy called Thomas Karl Landauer. And the essay is just called "How Much Do People Remember?" And it's a really interesting thing. He was thinking, how much has an average human long-term memory? How much do a mature person is remembering compared to a DIN A4 page, to a paper? And he came to the conclusion: a functional learned memory, human memory, has a content of around 1 billion bits for a mature person. That's 1 gigabyte. This is here a lot of floppy disks. So we can send your whole memory, your whole long-term memory to your home. It's a couple of floppy disks. It was about 1.5 megabyte. That was the storage of a floppy disk, or on one USB stick. But this is all of your memory. This is all you remember. This is every taste you remember, every smell you remember, every color, every folk song as well. And I don't know if you remember every folk song of your childhood that exactly. Maybe I do. I know a lot of songs, but everyone's brain, everyone's storage is managed differently. And yeah, we tried to complain that with our brain, our publishing house brain, and I think we definitely have the Gruyter brain. You see it behind me, you see it in the room here. Our brain, our cultural heritage is all the knowledge we have stored inside our books. And compared to your brain, I don't want to say anything about your brains, but compared to your brain, it's a lot, but on the first view, it's not that much more, you know, because we have 55,000 books in our backlist, we have 15,000 in our front list. Even if some of you have been reading many books, it's a hard thing, I would say, to read 12 million pages and to remember 12 million pages. But is this everything? Is this check up your brain versus our brain done with just the comparison of the pages, of the amount of the pages? Do you think so? Because we don't think so. Our comprehension of a digital archive is leaded on the question, what is our digital brain? How is our digital brain working? And there are three things I would like to point out. Let me start with your brain. It's lossy. You can say anything about it, but it's lossy. If there's anything in that webinar that didn't forgot anything in their lives, I'd like to raise the digital hand now, but I think no one will do. Your brain is lossy. Our brain is lossless. Our books, our knowledge is stored, is safe. And another thing, it's objective. A scientific book that has been written one time, it's not said that it's not that correct anymore. You know, there are scientific researches from 2018 that are renewed already. But if a research is done one time, it's objective, and you can rely that it's written like it has been written at the time it has been published. And your brain, my brain, all of our brains are subjective, you know. You sometimes remember things as you like them to have, as you want them to have. Even your brain has functions to remember positive things more as negative things, and to remember things more positive than they were in reality. But this is the way that the folk songs I mentioned at the beginning were changing. And a digital archive, even a digital archive more than a book is also not lossy, but it can, the pages can destroy over the years, and you can't read it anymore. And then it's not objective anymore because you don't have all of that information. And that leads to our next point. Your brain is getting older. All of our brains are getting older, and they're staying the same. You know, it's one technology. It's a good technology. Don't get me wrong, but it's the same technology. And you remember me talking about the floppy disks. They have got older. They are too small. No one can work with them. But we are renewing our technologies. And that's the thing about the digital archive. Digital archives are always renewing their technologies, and we have the feeling that we will have to renew them over the years, definitely. We are selling ebooks right now. What can I tell you about the meaning of an ebook in 10 years? You know, if you'd been asked in 1995, what's the meaning of a floppy disk in 10 years? Maybe you would have said, oh, maybe we have floppy disk with 10 megabyte then. And at the year 2005, everyone had a CD burner. And that's what we're offering to you. And that's the thing we guarantee you. We not only do a one-time digitization, you know, an archive job is never done. It's never done. It's a renewing thing. And if you finished, you have to start at the beginning and look, is it stored for a long time? Because it's never stored for a lifetime. No server, no hard drive is for a lifetime. You have to have an instance that is taking care of it. And that's what I want to say. Digital archives aren't just a matter of collecting. It's a matter of completeness, for sure. So that's the point I'll come after this. It has to be complete, but it's a matter of technology and constant renewal, and that's our meaning of a digital archive. And when it comes to completeness, I just like to tell you an example why digital archives doesn't only have to be renewed but complete. You know, I've handled all of these books. I've sent them to digitization, and I had titles where I thought, okay, what are we doing here? Who will ever take care of this? And then we go into the statistics, into the usage, and we see, okay, this title is more used than we have ever expected. And yeah, you know in which situation we are this year. We have a German title from the year 2014. It's published in 2014. You find it in our DGBA history package, 2000 to 2014. And it's about epidemics in the 20th century. Infiziertes Europa is the German name, Infected Europe. It's quite interesting. It's definitely worth a look. It also has been interesting before that year, but when we take a look into the access statistic, it's 140 total downloads until 2017. It's 235 in 2018. It's 183 in 2019. Okay, but it's 709 in 2020. This topic has a completely different meaning now. And if we wouldn't have digitized this and would have only done a part, all the customers who had the downloads now by their students and everything, if they would have thought, okay, we didn't need the whole package because people are more researching on this or that, you can't think like that. And we also learned this year, another time, we can't think like this. A future importance of any archive title cannot be predicted. This is only from March 20 to June 20, this 800 downloads. And I think every student that had access to that book was happy, and every researching person, even in a private research. And yeah, that's what we want to tell you. Digital archives, if they are complete and if they are stored correctly, are our cultural memory, and what we are proud that we can serve it to you. And yeah, how we got to that point to talk about of ourselves as a cultural memory and being happy for our archive brain. My colleague Saskia Wenzel will take over now and have a talk about the history of the project. And yeah, I don't want to talk anymore. She can do. Let's have a switch to Saskia. Hi, Saskia.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, as Florian just introduced myself, I would like to talk about the project itself and how it came about and what the scope of the project is too. Yeah, I wanted to start this as a little fairy tale. So once upon a time, there was a publisher, and that publisher is the Gruyter, with the 270 years of academic research on its shelves. This is actually a picture from our own library, so we do have these books on our shelves. And we were in the past also offering all of these books, but we were offering them as in an on-demand service. So customers contacted us, and then we went into our own library and searched the books on our shelves and had them produced as ebooks or and PODs. But the question was actually then, why did we not offer the complete archive ever? Why did we always just have this as an on-demand service? And you have to keep in mind, on-demand meant for most of the orders that customers would have to wait about 10 to 12 weeks until they actually received their ebook or POD, because searching the books is very time intense. So thinking about this more and more, and also considering that we had gathered over the years a lot of experience with the digitization of other archives, for our publisher partners, namely a few of the university presses in the US. An idea was born that we would digitize the complete archive as we have it on our shelves in the Berlin office as well as in the Munich office, because we saw the need for libraries, that the content should be discoverable and immediately available, regardless of location, and not just on demand. And this, you have to know, this idea was born way before COVID-19. So we saw that demand was there even before the pandemic, and I guess it's a lot bigger now. Last but not least, one of the other reasons for us to digitize this archive completely was that we saw that we need to preserve our own cultural heritage as a very old German publishers, because on our shelves there are treasures from the German history, like books published by Lessing, Schleiermacher, Nietzsche, Kant, just to name a few of them. And you will see that later on also when our service provider shows you some actual books, that they became more and more fragile. So preserving them and transferring them into the digital age was definitely a need, regardless of revenue. The idea then also got a name, obviously. So we named it the Gruyter Book Archive. And you see on the right-hand side how many publishers are included in that, the Gruyter Book Archive. So all of the publishers that were acquired over time and then became part of the Gruyter Publishing House. And the oldest part of that is the Verlag Georg Reimer, founded in 1749, and that's why we say we have 270 years of academic research on our shelves. Just to talk about the scale of this project, so we are digitizing nearly 30,000 books. We had, when we started the project in 2017, already digitized around 10,000 books through our on-demand service, which was called Edition. The on-demand service ended, and we transferred all of the 10,000 already digitized books into the Gruyter Book Archive. Together with the 10,000 books that were already digitized, the 30,000 that we are digitizing through the Gruyter Book Archive, plus titles that were published as ebooks already when they were originally published between 2008 and 2014. That's an additional 10,000 titles. The whole De Gruyter Book Archive will contain about 50,000 titles published between 1749 and 2015. Of course, we cannot do that alone, and Danielo, my colleague, will talk about that in more detail later on. But I just wanted to name our two strong partners of this project. One of them is Datagroup in Romania, who are digitizing the books or scanning the books for us and creating the ebook and POD files. And the State Library in Berlin is also one of our partners, where we have a partnership and can loan books from their shelves and digitize them. The current status is that about 3/4 are available. And the rest of the titles will become available until the end of the year. You see that in the bars on the below, that the most of the titles that we are to digitize still are from the complete collection prior to 1990. So the older books need to be digitized. That is a lot more time consuming than the other titles that are from the more recent copyright years, and that's why there is still 1/4 to go. And you will see how fragile and how challenging these books are production-wise later on also, when our service provider shows you some examples. Some interesting facts that I wanted to share with you concerning usage and also acquisition of the titles that we've digitized, because you could say that why are you digitizing these books? Why is anyone interested in any of these titles and has not cherry-picked them through the on-demand service yet? Florian already showed you one example, and I have a few more numbers that I wanted to show you. So in terms of usage, you see that downloads speak for themselves. 4.6 million downloads of titles digitized between January 2017 and August 2020, and that's only the titles that we've digitized through the DGBA project, not the ones that were digitized before or that had been available before as ebooks already. So that's a lot of downloads for titles that were just recently digitized. That can be both chapter downloads and complete ebook downloads. On average, you see that 168 downloads per title, which is obviously lower than for a frontlist title, but it's still really good for titles older than 2000. And something that is especially interesting and very, very nice to see is that of all the titles that we've digitized, almost 95% have been downloaded at least once. So there are very, very few titles that do not generate any interest at all. And the vast majority of titles are discovered and also used at least once. If you look at the acquisition side of things, you see that there is obviously a strong interest in literary studies, philosophy, and theology. That is in line with what German research history has always been strong in. And it's also the majority of our titles. What you see too is that the exposure of the titles definitely creates demand. You see that in the 95% of titles downloaded at least once, and you also see that in the acquisition. So once the metadata of the titles is out there on our own platform, as well as on service providers' platforms and discovery services, you see on average that 2 print units and 3 ebook units are acquired. And you also see that the vast majority of orders come from individual users or from our individual orders through libraries. So it's not that we compile a big package and just have everyone acquire this package. No, it's actually individual orders trickling in because we have the metadata available for the titles and send the metadata out. Something that's also very interesting to see is, although about 85% of the content is German language, you see that 50% of the acquisitions come from outside of Germany. So there is definitely a global appeal. I then also looked at 2 examples, or I want to show you 2 examples of books that we've digitized. One is World Mapping Today. It was published in 2002 and had very strong sales at that time. Obviously, sales then went down, which is a natural life cycle for any book. But what you see there, and what's nice to see, is that it was digitized in 2012 and then started to sell individual copies since then. And you see that sales then went up again in 2017, which is when we had the DGBA launched and increased our marketing efforts, increased our discovery efforts too for those titles. And then naturally sales went up again for this title, so we could in a way revive World Mapping Today. Another nice example is the Introduction to Law, Einführung in die Rechtswissenschaft, which was published in 1966. I unfortunately do not have the historical sales data for that title. That's not available anymore, but something that was very nice to see was when we digitized it in 2019, so that's also very recent, the digitization, it immediately sold 139 copies. Something that I wouldn't have expected, because I would say, Introduction to Law from 1966, that's not of interest to anyone, but it is, it looks like it is. So it's something that we just cannot predict. And that's also why each individual title digitized matters to us. So after I've given you this very broad overview of what we've done and what the scale of the project is, I'd like to hand over to my colleague Danielo, who will go down with you to the machine room of our project and talk about the lessons learned and the challenges that we've actually faced during the digitization of our books.
So hi again. As mentioned, I would like to invite you to go with me below under the deck, so to say. After slowly decreasing the focus from bird's eye view from our colleague Flo over business level presented by Saskia, we will now share some insights or lessons learned from the machine room of the project, so to say. I will start and my colleague from Datagroup, Iuliu Kiritescu, will follow. We talked about lessons learned, so to say. I would like to summarize again the goals we need to face. I'm with the Gruyter for over 3 years now, and my colleagues and I have been able to digitize more than 20,000 titles since then. Meanwhile, we also gathered a treasure of experience which we would like to share with you today. Let us summarize again the related goals and tasks we had to face. As Saskia mentioned, we had to overcome the on-demand service, which should end, overcome cherry picking and fulfill the duties of a cultural heritage we are taking care of, transferring the calculated 30,000 non-digitized books so far into the 21st century, which means digitize them, which would lead us to a complete archive of 50,000 titles. Let's talk about the implementation of what we try to do. This is the big project. First of all, it's a challenging task, as I said, and how to tackle those. First of all, you need to team up. We found partners that strengthen our team. First of all, Datagroup, our renowned service provider based in Timișoara, Romania. Working together with them for this project is one of the next chapter of a success story, more than one of the next chapter of the success story. We have been able to exchange knowledge and growth for more than 10 years now. With their expertise in contactless scanning of fragile books, they fit our needs in digitizing and restoring our historical in-house library. Second, but not less important, the State Library of Berlin. They are a direct neighbor of the Gruyter. Let us say 200 meters far away from our office. I could easily wave them, nevertheless, and say hello to all who participate today. Nevertheless, and of course, more important, they are the guardian of enormous fundus of 11 million print books, by far the largest universal scientific library in the DACH market. They can fulfill each gap we are able to identify in our own library in the majority of cases, a typical win-win situation. It helps us to ensure completeness, and each book borrowed and scanned will be added to their portfolio. Next step, if you have found the right partners, set your standards. Standards that should be in line with the needs of your customers and end users. What Datagroup is doing for us is more than scanning, it's a digital restoration. We will see more of it in a minute, but let's have a short look at those two examples here. An image of an historical book on the left side, which all its scares, and the same page after the restoration. And the effort didn't end on page level. The second image below shows you what's needed to receive a useful optical character recognition, short known as OCR. Blurred letters needs to be substituted to increase the technical readability, so to say high quality, which fits the needs of changing scholarly environment in the 21st century. So we talked about partnering and standards. Next important step for us would be structuring and packaging. 50,000 titles out of 270 years of academic publishing, as we saw in Saskia's presentation, will be offered to our customers, but we know that not every institution is that well equipped to purchase the whole archive as one. That's why we decided to structure our portfolio into 15 subject areas broken down into 3 year-based collections. Specialist institutions will so be able to choose packages that serves their demand best. Persistent UIs and mark records will ease the integration to their catalog, and that will allow them access to the 270-year-old history. And last step of implementation is responsibilities. Clear responsibilities. Clear organized workflows help to ensure a constant knowledge transfer from one partner to the other. So, as in our example, we're moving books from Berlin to Timisoara. Scan, restoration, and first bibliographic maintenance is done in Timisoara before Datagroup ships back the books to us, where we reorganize our historic library. Quality assurance, which each step, as I said before, of the production helps us to reach the high standard we all agree to. So after those insights for implementation, I would like to share some findings we made during the first 2.5 years of production history. First of all, findings, literally speaking, we found books that never made their way into our electronic infrastructure. We added more than 10,000 ISBNs to our system. Datagroup is capturing metadata such as title, author name, and the number of pages during the production, and provides us an ONYX file which will be implemented in our system. In addition, of course, we also deduplicate our holdings. This is one of our most challenging tasks. Once the duplicate is discovered, we mark it and exclude it. All these efforts unfortunately leads to changing title list, but as you can see in those 2 examples here, the total amount is still increasing. Second topic of findings I would like to talk about is metadata. It is the other most challenging task we are facing. Get your data right, especially in an environment that becomes more and more digital, is a lesson we learned. What we clearly see on the right-hand side is the 10 times higher usage of younger titles. You could argue that this is a simple fact of higher relevance, but I would like to raise the thesis that this is due to a better visibility and therefore accessibility of younger titles. We clearly see a rising of demand for older titles too. Florian shared a current example, but I'm quite sure we will be able to increase usage of historic books with the current digitization, which also simply fits a changing demand on customer side. Think about all the data-driven studies these days. And if we have the time, let me give you another example of my own. Back in the days, I joined the class at the university that deals with Marx and Engels as historian. I finished that class with a work about the East Indian Company and their writings. The Gruyter lists close to 50 volumes in the series, 10,000 of pages you would need to read to ensure completeness. But these days, you simply search for keywords and the results will pop up on your screen. This is a functionality our platform is able to provide our customers. And this is a huge step forward to deal with such historic sources as we offer. And the last one I would like to present is the importance of our archives and finding for ourselves. We are creating a new library in old shelves with a signature. And we started to establish the idea of an open library for researchers of our faculties. We would like to invite people from the science environment of Berlin to use our historic books for their thesis and for their researches. And all of this is also open for internal use by marketing and editorials. A lot of nice stories shared during the project with the marketing and communication team. So that's from my side. I shared some implementation insights, some findings we made so far. You saw the progress by Saskia, and let's go more in detail by having a look at the video and then handing over to my colleague Iuliu. As mentioned, he would share some more insights from the production room. Thanks a lot.
You will see in the movie if it will run.
Yeah, we interrupt you shortly, Iuliu, and to show the video because it was nice production you guys have done.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said, this is another part of our old and historic library in Berlin, and this is how it looks like at the beginning. Shelves full of old and fragile books, and yeah, we had to move them.
That was our historic library you saw.
Yeah. And now you see my colleague Flo, who's packing the boxes. I did the same for most of the days at the beginning of the project.
Yeah, I started as a student at Gruyter, so that was my main job at the beginning.
And we did not personally deliver the titles to Mishwara. That was done by Datagroup themselves. Thank you very much for helping us out at that point. And it was more than one shipment. It was separated over months.
Almost 1 year of traveling back and forth from Timișoara to Berlin. And here you can see the technology we are using. As far as I know, we are the only company which owns 3 RoboScans. It's a special technology used to scan old books. It has a very friendly approach to scanning old books. They have it has a cradle which does not allow to open the book to more than 60 degrees. So this will prevent breaking the spine of a book. Everything is based on air suction. So basically the pages are absorbed towards a prism with the cameras. So you don't have to use your hands and damage the book. Also, the pages are turned based on an air technology. So it's done automatically and in a really, really safe way. It's specially dedicated to old books. And when I say old books, I have here a few examples, and that's why I was saying at the beginning that I wouldn't judge a book by its cover. And that's the beauty of the RoboScan, that you can configure it, the intensity of the air suction, the power of the air jet, which turns the pages according to the age and I wouldn't say quality, but resistance of the paper. As you have seen in the movie, the prism, the books is placed in the cradle like this, and the prism goes up and down. If you don't configure the intensity specifically for each book, the risk of damage is really high. Or maybe if you look at this book, the pages are so old and so sensitive that when the prism comes up, there is the risk to pull the pages from the book, especially I don't know if you can see it, but the binding of the book is done with thread, it's not a modern glued book spine towards the spine. So basically you only have a few, two, maybe 4 points in which the pages are kept together. And if you are not using the correct settings for the RoboScans, you always risk to take the pages out. And of course, there are some nice surprises. I'm not going to open it, in the whole map, but I have here in my hands an almost 4-meter long map published in 1926. So that's why I'm saying that old books means treat each one according to its condition. Or I would have another example. You can see it's an archive book, and if you look at it, no one read it before. This specific book, not this title, but this specific book, I'm convinced that nobody read it, because not even the pages, as you can see, the pages are not cut. So that's why I'm saying that probably DGBA is the most challenging project I've worked on until now.
Iuliu, there are 2 questions, Iuliu. Sorry to interrupt. About the software that were used for OCR scanning of Gothic letters and the software of creating ebooks.
So basically the OCR, it's done with the ABI Fine Reader server edition, and we have a special license for the Frakturschriften, for the Gothic letters, and the ebooks. Maybe ebooks is not it's not quite correctly understood. It's basically we produce the reprint PDF files, which are after that optical. We run an OCR procedure on them, and we create a searchable PDF. I would rather say an ePDF. And from that ePDF, we create the ebook, which includes an XML, article XML file with metadata, and we'll link the searchable PDF with the XML. We have a link inside the XML to the corresponding pages into the PDF file. So basically, we have a combination. We have an online package between XML, metadata XML, and content, searchable content, like searchable PDF. That's basically, and we are using, for creating the XML, we are using our own apps, which we developed specifically for the required and mandatory DTDs used by the Gruyter platform, and the PDFs are produced with the ABI Fine Reader technology.
I hope that solves the question. I think we don't have that much time anymore. It's 10 minutes. Should we? You think we should jump over to the rest of the questions?
Yeah, I guess it would be the nice, and there are good questions in the Q&A, just to answer the questions from the Q&A.
Feel free to read the next one, Danielo.
You already answered about the special efforts you put into OCR Gothic letters. Iuliu?
Yeah.
So this one was answered, and there was one I was stumbling about the costly undertaking and the return on investments. I guess Saskia would be the best to answer that.
So what you saw on my previous slides was that we see usage and then obviously also sales for these titles naturally trickling in. The return on investment is probably a little difficult to just put in numbers now, but what we can say that it to a large degree has already paid off, and even if it hadn't paid off, we would have undertaken that still, because we think it's important to have that archive digitized, and we've been doing it for other publishers too, in our publisher partner program. So it just came naturally that we said we would have to do our own archive too. I hope that answers the question in as good as I can do that in just 1 minute now.
Yes, a success story, I guess that would summarize it the best. There's a question for a specific app you use using. You mentioned one app you used, but you also answered as it's an own developed one, right?
Yeah, it's only for internal use. It's not available on the market. We have a special software development department which produces software for our needs for the production department. So basically, I can tell you the name, but it won't tell you anything. It's called Split General. It's called Split General, and it runs. Basically, we are using it to capture the metadata from the PDF, like title, subtitle, author. It's capable of capturing, if available, maybe abstracts or keywords, I don't know, biographies of the author and other information necessary, like references or literature within literature section within a book. We save all that information on our own DTD and file, and from there we are converting the XML and chunking it into articles as required by the Gruyter standards. And of course, as you have seen in the presentation of Danilo's, we are uploading those packages to the submission checker, to the CMS of the Gruyter, which validates the DTD and checks if the online packages we are producing are compliant with all the required standards, meaning DOIs, first page, last page, copyright statements, and publishing date, and all kind of information. If the links are working, if everything is complete. It's a technical process which runs in the backend.
Yeah, there's one other question about sensitive content. And yes, right, we also need to handle with sensitive content in our project. You saw the old shelves, and also the Gruyter published between 34 and 45. And we have our own concept for that, and but it's way too long to present, and we will have another probably session for that only, because that's why I'm sharing a link to all attendees, which explains on our website how we're treating those titles. But we are aware of, and yeah, thanks for the question.
Yeah, we do think so that it's worth digitizing the content for researchers. So we won't censor the content. We won't make it available to everyone on our platform, but we will still digitize the content.
I shared the link. How many minutes left? 3.
3 minutes left, yeah. So
how many questions do we have left?
Yeah.
How is the image metadata treated in the process? Way too long to answer, sorry. There was a question for specific designers included. Yeah, in-house, of course, not externally at the moment. But if you would see demand for it, we will reach out. But you have specialized guys in your offices as well, right, Iuliu? I've been there a couple of times, and you would be quite impressed what huge efforts these guys are doing in Timisoara. Huge buildings, people sitting in front of screens, and yeah, changing that as I showed, and the video shows as well.
It's rather more a like in construction. You have an old building, you want to restore it, and you want to improve it. You take old pictures of it and you try to bring it to its former glory. It's exactly the same in reprint for us. We are not just scanning old books and publish them like that. We are trying to improve them. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a designer's work, because I don't know, it's more like a archaeologist, which is trying to gather the pieces of a old pot and to make it better than it was when he found it, he discovered it. It's a metaphor, but at the moment I cannot express it better than this.
There's one question left from an anonymous attendee. How you made any of these titles open access? We had a campaign last year in 2019 when we celebrated 270 years of our archive. We put 270 titles open access. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I just shared the link where you can find all the 270 titles that we made available open access.
Closing words, I guess, needed.
If you have
Closing
any
words,
further questions,
any other questions, please feel free to reach out to our colleague Florian, and we will try to answer them as detailed as possible, probably a lot more detailed than we were able to do here. But just as a closing remark, we do think that it's definitely worth to digitize an archive, and even if it's not for the money, we would still have done it, because we think it's our cultural heritage and it's our duty to preserve these books and to preserve the research from past centuries for future generations. And it is definitely challenging, and we might never get to 100% of a complete archive, but we're trying to get as close as possible. Thank you all very, very much for listening.
yeah, many. I see the attendees here, so many of you stayed into the room, and we're really proud of that. And yeah, I shared my email into the chat, so please have a last chance to copy it. But the PDF of our presentation will be sent out as well, and there you can copy it out if you like. Yeah, we had fun doing this. I hope you also had fun watching us. It's a really great day in Berlin. I don't know how's it in the rest of Germany or even in the US, where it's morning right now, but have a nice day. Have nice other webinars you're watching at the Frankfurt Book Fair. And of course, the most important thing, stay healthy and stay safe. And yeah, I think that was it from our side.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Special thanks to Timisoara. See you soon.
Yes.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank
day,
you for
everybody.
participating,
Bye-bye.
Iuliu. Thank you for having your time. And bye-bye.
Thank you for inviting me. It was my honor and my pleasure. Bye-bye.